Thank you, Mr Acting Deputy President. I rise tonight to oppose the repeal of the clean energy legislation package that is currently the law in Australia. And as I stand here tonight, I'm reminded of T.S. Eliot's poem *The Hollow Men*, when he says, "This is the way the world ends, not with a bang but a whimper." He was asked afterwards whether that was still his view some years later, and he said that he wouldn't write that again because he wasn't sure that it would end either way. He said, as a result of the H-bomb, he said, there were people whose houses were bombed who don't remember hearing anything. And I think that's where we are in this particular debate, Mr Acting Deputy President, that we have a situation where there is such denial of reality going on in this parliament, but it is not shared outside the parliament. People actually get it. They know that we are living in a world of accelerating global warming, and they know that we have to act on it. And there is a level of anxiety out there in the back of the minds of most people. But the people I particularly want to talk about tonight and speak on behalf of are future generations, of those who are yet to be born. I want to speak on behalf of the voiceless, young people like those that I met outside the Parliament today with the Australian Youth Climate Coalition, others, young people around Australia who are marshalling and marching and wanting action on climate change because they know it's their future. But I also want to speak on behalf of the ecosystems of the planet who don't have a voice in this Parliament. All we have heard are the superficial and trite three-word slogans about axing the tax and about power prices, and nothing about the real impacts of what we are currently living through. Now, I can tell you, Mr Acting Deputy President, that many, many years ago I went to the Barrier Reef for the very first time, and having been back there in recent years, it is much deteriorated from how it used to be. And that is as a result of many things. But global warming is accelerating the degradation of coral reefs around the planet. Not only our own Great Barrier Reef, but reefs elsewhere in the world, Mr Acting Deputy President. And I say that some years ago I campaigned hard for a long time to have the coral reefs of New Caledonia listed as World Heritage. It was an 8-year campaign, a huge amount of work went into it, and I'm very pleased to say that they are now listed as World Heritage. But it's a Pyrrhic victory, because you can't protect the coral reefs of the planet here in Australia or in New Caledonia or anywhere else in the world unless you act on global warming, because acidification is weakening the structures of the corals. Warming is leading to the bleaching of the corals. The cyclones that are coming through around the world are leading to the destruction of those reefs. And we're seeing it right around, as I mentioned before, the West Antarctic ice sheet. We're seeing it in the melting of the Arctic and now ongoing release of methane from the permafrost. And we're seeing the extreme weather events around the world. And those extreme weather events are already displacing people and destroying culture. On many of our Pacific Island neighbour countries, they have their burial grounds next to the lagoon, next to the sea. And they are now seeing, with sea level rise and intensified storms, that they are losing some of the fundamental parts of their culture, and they're being forced to move internally onto higher ground, and now, as in the case of Kiribati, buying land in Fiji where ultimately they'll move 100,000 people if they have to. Tuvalu is saying they're not going anywhere. And yet I hate to think about the fear that would be in the hearts of people in Tuvalu in the storms that come through there with the storm surges and the overwash of those very low-lying islands. Funafuti is already severely adversely impacted, and only a month or so ago in this parliament I had young people here from Kiribati, from Tuvalu, begging us to respond to the climate crisis because they are going to lose their homes, their country, their culture as they see it. And we're going to see, with extreme weather events around the world, loss of food security. That's why the Greens have campaigned so hard to look after agricultural land and water, because we've already seen, with global food crisis in 2008 caused by extreme weather events wiping out crops through fire, through drought around the world, that you had an incredible rise in prices for grains, and that ultimately led to the Arab Spring. The first marches in the Arab Spring were marches in Tunisia, and they were because of the increase in the price of bread, and people actually were marching in the streets with baguettes because they were protesting about the increase in price of grain. And that is the reality. That's why the Pentagon has recognised global warming as a major security risk, and they say that the future wars are not going to be planetary wars as such, global wars as such. They are going to be regional conflicts as a result of displacement of people. And as I have said many times in this Senate over the years, Mr Acting Deputy President, if we think that the current issues we have driving the displacement of people are as far as it goes, we are wrong. We are going to see millions displaced in the coming years because of climate conflict, internal and external to various countries. So that's the situation we find ourselves in, a 4 to 6 degrees trajectory of global warming, a loss of between 1/3 and 1/4 of all species on the planet by 2050. And that is actually heartbreaking when you think about alpine species in particular who can't go any higher. That's it for them. In Tasmania there is a cider gum which is going to extinction because it's on the Central Plateau, it can't go any higher. I mentioned earlier the white lemuroid possum in North Queensland. It can't go any higher. It was likely to go to extinction because of global warming. And the same around the world. And it's not just global warming on its own. Put it together with habitat loss, put it together with invasive species, and you see an accelerated loss. And just this last week I heard the anguish in scientists who are talking about the Ebola virus, for example, and saying that they're now going to have to consider trying out experimental drugs, etc., on chimps and apes in zoos around the planet in order to try to save species in the wild. And this is where we're going to see increasing amounts of this kind of, what do you do when you've reduced habitat so much, animals are in contact with humans, and equally humans are spreading measles and the like into those ape populations in Africa. And you can ridicule this, but the reality is respiratory illness is being brought to the gorilla populations by humans, not the other way round. We are seeing planetary disaster because of global warming, and Australia had a framework to deal with it. Now, when I came into the Senate, to address global warming because I recognised, and as an environmentalist, I have campaigned all my life for protection of the environment, but I realised that no amount of areas saved can survive global warming. Unless you deal with that, you will lose everything ultimately, from marine ecosystems through to terrestrial ecosystems, and you will see impacts on people. And that's exactly what we're seeing. That's why we developed the Clean Energy Package. We worked very hard. It was a condition the Greens made of former Prime Minister Gillard before she became Prime Minister, to say that in that agreement we would have a carbon price and that it would come into effect by the 1st of July 2012. It would be legislated and come into effect, and that's exactly what happened. It was an incredibly well-designed package, recognised by the International Energy Agency as template legislation for developed countries. Template legislation for developed countries. We should be really proud of that. Australia took a leading role in the development of legislation that other countries could look to, together with complementary measures, to things like the Australian Renewable Energy Agency and the Clean Energy Finance Corporation. It was an emissions trading scheme. It is an emissions trading scheme, and the only reason it has a fixed price, and I remind people that the former Prime Minister Rudd's scheme also had a fixed price for 1 year. This had 3 years, and the reason for that was that Labor and the Greens could not agree on a level of ambition of what was required, and we still don't. The Greens are the only political party in this parliament who are prepared to stand here and say we have to get to a 40 to 60% reduction by 2030 and net carbon zero by 2050 to give ourselves even a 50% chance of avoiding 2 degrees. That is the reality of the level of ambition, and 5% is so far out of where it needs to be, it is laughable. It was laughable in 2007, and now it cannot be taken seriously as a target, either to address the science or to address the global equity. Because if you are going to try and get to a 2015 treaty, and that's absolutely the commitment the Greens will be making from one end of the planet to the other, and we're represented in parliaments in 70 countries around the world, we want a global treaty on global warming, and it has to have a level of ambition that gives us a chance. But it also has to have part of it the money that needs to go to developing countries in particular who, through no fault of their own, are now suffering the consequences of global warming. And that's why we have to do that, and that's why it is actually immoral for Australia to stand up in a Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting and block finance being made available to developing countries to adapt to global warming. But having said that, Mr Acting Deputy President, it wasn't just the fact that we couldn't agree on a level of ambition. The idea of setting up the Climate Change Authority came from the United Kingdom, where they have a high-level scientific panel who advises the British House of Commons in relation to what the level of ambition should be, and so climate policy has been depoliticised through that process, and that's as it should be. The Climate Change Authority should make recommendations to the parliament, and to its credit, the Climate Change Authority here has made some very important reports and recommendations to the parliament, including the recommendation that we get to the 40 to 60% trajectory reductions by 2030, and that's exactly what we should be doing. And if you think about that, then you know that we have to get on now. But the other point that I want to make is that the rest of the world is already moving. In many ways, the revolution has been won, Mr Acting Deputy President. The revolution has been won. Renewable energy around the world is expanding at the fastest rate. It is the greatest level of investment in new electricity generation is in renewables around the planet. And we are hearing every progressive economy around the world is investing in education and training and decarbonising their electricity system, because they recognise that is where the jobs, investment and growth are in this century. This is the century of transitioning to a low-carbon economy, and if you don't get on board with it, you'll be a left-behind rust bucket. Now, I know that's where Senator McDonald wants to be. That's where his comfort zone is, a left-behind rust bucket. But the rest of us would like to see investment in education, investment in innovation and cleverness. And we heard today the government trying to argue that companies had been driven offshore. Wrong about that, Mr Acting Deputy President, but I can tell you that there are big solar companies who are not making investments in Australia because of uncertainty that the Abbott government has created about carbon policy. We are losing mega investment because there is no certainty that Australia is on the right track on climate change. And if we were, we would be attracting more investment. But we're not. Trillions actually are on the sidelines. The investor group on climate change has given evidence to that effect. That's why we need to keep our renewable energy target and keep it at 41,000 gigawatt hours. But it needs to go beyond 2016, and that's why the Greens are committed to 100% renewable energy as quickly as possible and at least 90% by 2030. If you put together 100% renewable energy, if you put together a 40 to 60% trajectory, you are putting together a really exciting plan for Australia, because you're talking about actually redesigning our cities, thinking about the way we live, a huge investment in retrospectively looking at renovation of existing buildings, the built environment, the urban environment, changing the way that we do agriculture, looking at the research and development to see how we need to change in order to be able to sustain ourselves into the future. They're the kinds of exciting things that young people want to be involved in, and the one group of people we are going to drive out of this country because you want to abandon carbon pricing are the best and brightest. They will go overseas, as they did during the Howard years. We lost some of our best and brightest in solar technology at that time because they realised that there was no hope in Australia and they went overseas. They've come home and they're working in these fields in Australia, but they will go again because they want to be part of the future. They don't want to be stuck in a rust bucket economy like Senator McDonald. They don't want to be in that place. They want to be where innovation takes place. But, Mr Acting Deputy President, whilst I feel incredibly disappointed that this Senate appears to want to destroy an emissions trading scheme that is in place right now and wants to abandon carbon pricing and leave us with nothing in terms of a market mechanism that provides the cheapest and most effective abatement in terms of energy, in terms of reducing greenhouse gas emissions, I want to say this to give hope to those young people who are outside today, who will no doubt be despairing at the thought that this government is going to abandon carbon pricing, abandon serious efforts on climate change. And what I can say to them is this will galvanise a whole generation. You are not alone, because around the world people are moving and want a 2015 treaty, and that means people under the leadership of President Obama in the United States are moving. People are moving in the United Kingdom, in Europe, in China. Everywhere you look around the planet, except for Canada and Australia, who are in the rust bucket category, they are over there in the umbrella group, and they'll do everything they can to rip down action on global warming in Ban Ki-moon's summit, UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon's summit, at Lima at the end of the year and into next year. But I can tell you, Mr Acting Deputy President, that the issue, by imagining you are getting climate change off the agenda now, you're actually making it front and centre for the 2016 federal election campaign. Australians are not going to tolerate the kind of climate denial, and that's why I have a second reading amendment which I am moving in this debate, and I want to make sure that in this second reading amendment that we recognise that the world is on track for 4 degrees of warming, and we're calling on the government to adopt a 40 to 60% below 2000 levels by 2030. And I move that second reading amendment because I want young people, I want future generations to know that in this parliament every single one of us knew what was at stake. Every single one of us knew we're on track for 4 to 6 degrees of warming. Every single one of us knew what the consequences were, but only a few of us were prepared to actually act on it. And that includes the Greens, who took a leadership role at this time and will continue to do so. And when the votes are taken, people will have the names for future generations to look back at and see who were the people who sold out Australia, because it is selling us out in a global context. It is the opportunity cost to this nation, not only the physical cost of global warming, not only the trauma of global warming.
Thank you, Senator Milne.